He shot his girlfriend, then claimed he thought she was an intruder hiding in the bathroom, so whoops. We've got the scoop on that and more. We hear all the time about celebrities who got into fender benders or arrested while peacefully protesting, or even more serious offenses like domestic violence or DUI. But we wanted to take a look today at the celebrities with the longest prison sentences and what they did to get to that point. Before we dive in and discuss, go ahead and click subscribe and ring that notification bell so that you'll never miss out on our future videos. And give this video a thumbs up if you were surprised that certain celebrities on this list are still doing time. Let's get to it. He was in all of those Subway commercials at one point, the guy who claimed he lost a ton of weight, like 200 pounds, and switched to a, quote, healthier lifestyle through only eating Subway sandwiches. Yes, that guy. Jared Fogle is currently serving a hefty prison sentence. While others on our list will be famous musicians, athletes, and actors, Fogle was a celebrity for being the spokesperson of sandwiches. And he made a ton of money through appearing in these ads. Unfortunately, the success of his spokesmanship was just a front. Behind the scenes, Fogle had some seriously sinister pastimes when he wasn't choosing between wheat or 9-grain. Federal investigators found proof on his devices that he had had conversations arranging to pay to have sex with underage girls, and sought sex with minors in general. He was also in possession of child pornography and charged for trading it online as well. He was arrested in 2015 and pled guilty to the offenses, earning him a cool 15 years behind bars. He's currently serving his sentence at the Englewood Correctional Facility in Colorado and isn't eligible for parole until 2029. This next celebrity shot his girlfriend and then claimed, "Oh, I thought she was an intruder." But it was too late, she was already dead. Professional sprinter Oscar Pistorius indeed shot his girlfriend, South African model Reeva Steenkamp, on Valentine's Day 2013, so we're thinking maybe things got heated on the day meant for romance. The South African sprinter actually had both feet amputated when he was just 11 months old due to a congenital defect, but he still grew up to compete professionally. Well, to this day, he's stuck by his story that he thought she was an intruder hiding in the bathroom, but prosecutors were not so convinced. Initially, he was sentenced to a maximum of 5 years in prison. He was released less than a year later. Again, prosecutors were not convinced he had done his time and appealed the sentence, which led him to being sent back to prison for another 6 years. Prosecutors called this too a shockingly lenient sentence and appealed yet again, which added on another few years, totaling 15 years in prison. So when the sentence was increased in November 2017, he still had 13 and a half years left to serve time. He'll be eligible for parole in 2023 and might not be looking at release until around 2030. Those prosecutors were not messing around and indeed demanded justice. Sam Hurd definitely seemed like he had a bright career ahead of him in the NFL. He was rising in popularity and his stats were improving significantly during his time in the limelight. He played wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys before moving to the Chicago Bears in 2011. So you know he was swimming in piles of that NFL cash from those high-profile deals. So what happened? In December of 2011, he attempted to buy a huge amount of hard drugs and was arrested for it. Because the quantity was so large, law enforcement in charge of the case came to the conclusion that he intended on reselling the drugs for a profit. Well, almost a year later, he was released on bail only to be arrested once again for violating the terms of his release, which led to his bail privileges being revoked. Just 2 days later, Hurd pled guilty to the original drug charges and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. He's currently serving his sentence in a federal prison in Texas. Friends, what do you think? Do you think that the charges Hurd was arrested for should have indeed warranted the same 15 years as Fogle or Pistorius' crimes? Or do you disagree with him receiving the same sentence as a child molester and a murderer? Definitely let us know in the comments. The hashtag #MeToo raged through the internet like a wildfire. It literally felt like within seconds we were seeing articles, posts, tweets, and captions that included the trailblazing hashtag. Harvey Weinstein was no doubt a huge name in Hollywood. He was the film producer, the guy who could make things happen in La La Land, which obviously meant he worked with hundreds of people throughout his career. Well, in October of 2017, multiple brave women began coming forward to tell their stories about sexual abuse and exploitation they had suffered at the hands of Harvey Weinstein.
He came very close to me and was kind of trying to kiss me, and I just pushed him away and ran to the door.
It wasn't one or two women. More than 80 women had accused Weinstein by the end of October 2017. This obviously caused the Hollywood mogul's credibility to come crashing down, since nothing like this had ever really been previously exposed on this level. In February of 2020, after a long legal battle, Weinstein was found guilty of 2 of the 5 charges brought before the court. Despite trying to overturn the conviction repeatedly, he was sentenced to a total of 23 years in prison. Suge Knight was of course a huge name in music, co-founding Death Row Records and being involved with the come-up of hip-hop and rap kings like Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, and Tupac. I mean, he was absolutely huge in the music industry. He was even notoriously known for having gotten death row artists out of jail or out of legal trouble, most famously getting Tupac out from behind bars after just a few weeks, when he was supposed to be spending 4.5 years in prison. Well, unfortunately, there was no one there to bail him out of his own legal troubles. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, he had a few run-ins with the law and spent a few years behind bars for assault convictions and ensuing violations of probation and parole. We saw some of the drama that took place early on through news headlines and when Straight Outta Compton was released in 2015. But the biggest crime that sealed his fate was in that same year in 2015. That year, he executed a fatal hit and run. In 2018, after a long legal battle, he ended up pleading no contest to voluntary manslaughter for the crime. This earned him a prison sentence of 28 years, and he'll be eligible for parole only in 2037. If the glove don't fit, you must acquit.
It doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
This phrase went down in history after the O.J. Simpson trial dominated headlines for a very long time. A lot of people assume that O.J. Simpson has now been leading a crime-free and trouble-free life after the huge 1995 case in which he was almost convicted for 2 counts of murder. The former NFL player underwent legal proceedings after being arrested for the murders of his ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman, and was actually found not guilty.
Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder.
Again, you would think after a close call like that and walking free that he would stay out of trouble. Nope. In 2007, O.J. Simpson was arrested in Las Vegas for breaking into a hotel room and committing armed robbery, holding guests at gunpoint. 3 days later, he was arrested and held without bail. A year later, he was found guilty for the crimes and sentenced to 33 years in prison. He only ended up serving 9 years before being granted parole in 2017, and let's hope he stays out of trouble this time. 50 Cent may not have had even remotely as long of a sentence as the others on our list, but because he's such a superstar in the rap and hip-hop world, we had to include him. He grew up in Queens, New York City, with his mother, and the two lived in poverty for most of his childhood. She dealt hard drugs in order to feed her family and unfortunately passed away when 50 Cent was just 8 years old. He had to provide for himself at a very young age and ended up selling hard drugs and narcotics to earn a living. He was subsequently arrested in June of 1994, and law enforcement ended up finding a larger stash of illegal substances when his home was searched. With the charges put together, he was sentenced to 3 to 9 years in prison. He was then given the option, though, of doing a 6-month rehabilitation boot camp, which he opted in for over the jail time. It was actually this time at the boot camp that inspired him to make Change, the double entendre that led to his stage name 50 Cent. He went on to inspire millions of people with his music and even survived being shot multiple times, and continues to be a legend in the music industry today. MMA fighter War Machine's actual name is Jonathan Paul Koppenhaver, which most people don't know. I mean, he legally changed his name to War Machine in 2008, so clearly he wanted to leave behind the name that he was given when he was born. In the summer of 2014, War Machine severely beat up his ex-girlfriend Christy Mack and her then-boyfriend Corey Thomas. He was arrested, charged, and found guilty on 29 counts, including kidnapping, sexual assault, and coercion. Despite his lawyers trying to file new motions and request leniency from the court, the judge denied the motions and gave her remarks, saying she doesn't think he's a monster, that he's just human, but she has to consider that he's a danger to society. She sentenced him to life in prison, with the possibility of parole only after 36 years were served. The former MMA star will be 71 when the possibility of parole comes up. Well, friends, there you have it, our list of celebrities with the longest prison sentences. What do you think about the crimes they committed and the sentences they were dealt? And are there other celebrities who are also serving time for other crimes committed? Leave us a comment below. As usual, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell as we bring you more juicy info, gossip, and speculation about the shows and stars you know and love. Until next time!